right, Nick Hoffman. I've been looking forward to this conversation. You're a musician, adventure traveler. You do really cool video work. You are a pilot. If it wasn't for my absolute lack of musical talent, I would say you're my soulmate.
I like motorcycles. I see you got
There you
that
go.
back there. I like the snowboard. You got those back there too. I think, yeah, we're
All
gonna be.
right. So let's get to flying. You were talking about your airplane going out. You have as I would call it, a non-linear pilot career, but
Yeah,
so does almost every other pilot.
sure,
Right? You went rusty, and you came back, and you're flying now. You got
absolutely.
your air. You mentioned that you got an airplane in a hangar.
Yeah,
So, one, tell me how you dropped out and how you got back in. Those are
yeah.
kind of always the big points.
I mean, my aviation story starts with my dad. Um, my dad has always been an aviation enthusiast in one way or another. And growing up, he was always fascinated with planes, and he would always talk to me about planes. In fact, I remember when I was younger, he's a heating and air conditioning guy. He owns his own heating and air conditioning business back in Minnesota, where I grew up. And I remember him saying, looking back at my life now, I'm very happy with what I do, but if I could do it all over again, I'd go back and be a pilot, and we used to go to Oshkosh every summer with my uncle and my aunt and my cousins. My uncle was building a plane growing up in his basement, so I always had it around. So my dad and I started building remote control airplanes together. My dad, I guess he probably couldn't afford a plane, or whatever the reasons, he didn't learn to fly yet, but we were into model aviation, RC stuff. And then of course we went to air shows and all that stuff. So I just always loved it, is my point. And it's because of him, and when I was, I guess, about 17, I showed up at the Crystal Airport in KMIC underneath the Minneapolis airspace there. And I showed up and said, "Hey, I want to learn to fly, but I'm a broke musician and don't have any money." And they said, "Well, you can work here and pump gas and barter your flight time." And I said, "I'm in for that. I can work hard, definitely." So I started showing up there, and I would run the ramp and schedule lessons and pump gas and all that stuff. And then I would take that and barter that time for flight time. I was playing in bars on the weekends and working at Crystal Skyways in Crystal, Minnesota, during the week. And so I worked my way all the way through my private and started working on my instrument right away. And then I ended up moving to Nashville in January of 2000. So first thing I did when I got to Nashville is I went and found a plane to rent, and I flew for about another year. And then things just got so busy on the road that just like everybody, life happened, right? Some people, they have kids, or they go to college, or they can't afford it, or whatever they have, whatever they're.
It's I honestly believe it's every other pilot has the story of life got in the way, and now I'm ready to come back.
Absolutely.
Or I came back
I'm
that
the
way.
definition of that. So it was 15 whole years for me
Wow.
from the lat. I mean, and I had gone up with buddies and stuff every once in a while. And, we'd even, fly in, private jets and stuff like that for different musical things every once in a while. And I'd be the guy that hopping in the right seat, or I'd go hunting and I'd be flying a Super Cub into the backcountry. I mean, I still flew whenever I could, but I wasn't current, and it certainly wasn't flying on my own. So, a couple of years ago, I dove back in, and it was a good buddy of mine that was the kind of the impetus for it. He kind of pushed me over the edge, and I dove back in hard. You know what I mean? I don't tend to have a kind of a middle switch. It's either full on or full off for me, and my obsession blew back up. And on a side note, my dad since then has bought a plane as well. I mean, this is 10, 15 years ago now. He bought a plane and has been.
That's awesome.
So now my dad and I, we started off going to air shows together and flying RC planes, and now we're both pilots.
That's pretty awesome.
So
go from that to being able to fly formation with your dad. That's pretty awesome.
Cool, isn't it? So I love it, and like I said, it's been one of the great joys of my life. I mean, and some of my favorite people that I've ever met have been through aviation. Some of my favorite life memories involve airplanes. And now, especially now that I'm back in the seat, I can't imagine my life without it. And I'm speaking to all the rusty pilots out there. One of the reasons that I didn't get back into it was because it was overwhelming. I was afraid maybe I won't remember everything, or maybe I'm, not going to have the same skills, or maybe I won't be good at it anymore, or maybe it's too expensive, or all these different things. And when I jumped back in, I went, why didn't I do this sooner? Why? Because there was no barrier. I mean, I fell right back into it. Brushing off the dust was way easier than I thought it was. And I just literally kind of kicked myself. Why didn't I do this sooner?
Here's a question for you. You tell some really cool stories, and you're about to, in your new show, tell some incredible stories of aviation.
Yeah.
Which on its own is probably going to help us bring a lot more people into this world.
I hope so.
Now, is there a story that you haven't been able to tell that you would love to tell when it comes to aviation, flying places?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story.
All right.
This has to do, I've never told anybody this, and maybe I'll get a call from the FAA. I don't know. So here's the story of my first solo flight. I took off from Crystal, Minnesota, and I headed towards, I headed towards a little town in the middle of Minnesota. So, and you know how it is back then, paper charts had it all charted out, waypoint, all the way. And my last waypoint was, looking for the airport. So I look up and I see a runway. It's got the right number on it. So down I go and I land, and I'm just so hyper focused, just afraid to do anything wrong, that apparently I missed noticing all the Black Hawk helicopters sitting on the tarmac until I landed, was on the runway, and I realized that I landed at the Army base, which is about 5 miles away from the airport. Has the exact same runway heading. And so here I go, down there, student pilot. I land, and I was like, now what do I do? I just turned around and just took off, and I didn't know what else to do. So I get back and I tell my instructor, and I'm like, I made the biggest mistake in the world. And of course I'm working there too. So these are my buddies, right?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, I don't know, man. You're probably going to get a call from the FAA. You're going to be in big trouble. You'll probably lose your student pilots. You're never going to be a pilot is basically what they told me. They're just giving me a hard time.
Wow. That's a harsh thing to be even joking about.
So the next day I walk into work, and they go, hey, man, the FAA called. They're going to be here in a couple hours. You need to stay here.
That's terrible.
So I'm sick to my stomach, and they never show up. And the next day they're like, yeah, the FAA called. They're going to be here today. They were sorry about yesterday. They strung this on for 2 more days, and then finally told me, no, nobody called. You know what I mean? They just gave me a hard time. So that's a story I've never told anybody about aviation. The point is that everybody, I mean, that could have been a lot worse, so.
Yeah. Well, it's
probably over by now, isn't it? 25 years later or whatever it is.
You're probably okay.
Good.
You can try to file a retroactive NASA report, but I'm not sure if that'll even the dates will go that far back. So before we completely wrap up, the one thing about pilots, we have each other's back. So tell us what you're up to, and how can we support you?
Oh, I mean, man, I'm a blessed guy. I've got a brand new music coming out that you can check out. My website is nickswildride.net for the TV show. nickhoffman.com is also there, and then all my socials, are Nick's Wild Ride. So all one word. So keep your eye out for brand new music. Keep your eye out for following my adventures flying around, and of course my adventures with the TV show. So just come on there and follow me along on my wild ride, You
got it. Hey, dude, it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you around the fire somewhere.
Likewise. Thank you guys for everything you guys do too. I'm a proud member and always will be.
Thanks, man.
It feels like I'm in the Lion King right now. Viva l'Italia.
Okay.
Welcome to Alaska. Here's some intestine. You eat this,
Here's to London.
We worked hard for this one.
Cheers.
Flying an airplane opens up the world to you in ways that nothing else can. This is my journey. I'm exploring this crazy world we live in from both the ground and from the air. My name is Nick Hoffman. I'm a musician. I'm an outdoorsman. I'm a traveler. And I'm a pilot.